Alright, so the shop is completely trashed right now because we are ripping it apart and revamping for Season 4 of the Fabrication series. But that doesn't stop me from making some really awesome videos and showing you guys how to build some really cool stuff. Now today it's all about how to build a custom pie cut exhaust for your chopper or motorcycle. And the secret weapon that I have is something you definitely want to check out right after this intro rolls. Now, it's no secret that I absolutely love doing exhaust work, so recently I had an opportunity to do some pie cut work on a custom chopper made by Old School Choppers. And this time I decided I'm going to try and save just a little bit of time doing all the pie cut work by buying the pie cuts. So I checked out the new line of Stainless Bros stainless steel pie cuts, and I gotta tell you, like right off the get-go, these things saved me a ton of time because we have so many pie cuts to do, and these are all ready to roll right out of the box. So make sure you check out stainlessbros.com, and we're going to get on to making this exhaust, starting with the head pipe. Now the entire exhaust is going to be made from 1 3/4 OD tubing with an 065 wall. It's about 44 millimeters for all of you guys not on the Imperial unit. But we do have to make some head flanges for the Harley Evo engine that we're actually building it to. So we'll get a straight section cut out, and then we'll slice down some 5/16 or 8 millimeter rings to slice up and wrap around the outside of the tube. Now we are just kind of sliding right through the fabrication of this, and I can understand if you don't really like that, but we do have a completely separate video dedicated to making these head flanges, so make sure you check the description or at the end of the video. It'll take you straight over there. But in order to do this, we're basically going to take those two rings, slice them up the middle, weld them, cut them right down the center of it so we have two separate pieces, face off the front of it, and taper the end of it so that we have a nice, clean, neat, even head pipe in which we can take off with our exhaust. It's very easy to do. You can kind of see how it went through on here, but if you want to check out that video, it's definitely up there. It goes into great detail. So I'm going to get these head pipes installed on the Evo engine itself, and I'm going to make sure that they're nice and tight so it's compressed and ready to roll. Then comes all the pie cut work. Now, normally we would have to slice all these up, and you know that I have, I don't know, half a dozen videos on pie cutting itself, but taking them straight out of the bag and tacking them all together because they're all pre-cut makes life a lot easier. So definitely serious thanks to Stainless Bros for coming out with these things. I absolutely love them. But we're going to get all of them set up, and I'm going to start with about 90 degrees here, and that's going to be 10 pieces of pie welded together in order to achieve that assembly angle. You really should have some sort of a design in mind already before you start doing this, but some of it's going to be kind of like Bob Ross style, and you're just going to figure it out as you go along. So I'd like to come across the engine right below the carburetor and just see what I can do. I'm just going to kind of fake it, but I really want to exaggerate the fact that there are pie cuts on this thing and not really hide them. So after measuring about where it needs to land, I'm going to go ahead and cut the head pipe down, tack on that 90 degrees worth of pies to it, and then we'll just kind of start from there and figure out exactly where we need to go. So once it's actually set up here, and I have it kind of aimed in the correct direction, I'm going to take a straight piece of tube, and we're going to see how well we stack up or what we need to put in here. So when I actually place up the tube here, you notice that we hit the push tubes, and we got to kind of figure out how to work that around. So I need to do somewhat of a straight section here, and I don't want to cut a straight section off the pie, so I'm going to take one of them, flip it over, and it's still going to keep that pie cut, look to it. But it will straighten it out and kind of pull that tube a little bit further away, so that way we don't end up hitting the push rod tubes. So just these two that we flipped over, tack them together real quick, and we'll check out how it actually lands when it's back on the bike. Now I'm going to take these two, stick them up here so it kind of runs relatively straight. It does look a little bit funky, but at the same time, once it's all welded together, it's not that big of a deal. So we'll take a couple more pieces of pie here and bring it around, set the tube up here, and it looks like we actually nailed it. So we're right at the right spot. It's not too close, not too far away. Get it tacked up to that straight section, and then hold it back up in place to make sure that everything is right where I need it to be. And as soon as I've confirmed that, I'm going to tack those together. The design I kind of have in my brain here is just to kind of dump them out the side, but you notice if we get too shallow, we're going to hit the transmission, so we're going to need to add a few more pieces of pie. Right now I have about 45 degrees, and I'm just going to keep on slapping a couple more on there, kind of one or two at a time, until I feel that the degree of transition is just right. Now, I didn't calculate this or anything, I'm just shooting from the hip on this. So when I get a few more stacked up there, looks like we're still going to come in a little bit shallow. One more piece of pie should do the trick, and then I'll fill in that gap there. So we'll get it all tacked up here, and literally you can just quite seriously just make this up as you go along. It's all about feel, about where you feel like it's going to be or where you want it. So as soon as I get that other one on there lined up, should be good to go. Clear the transmission, and we'll get it all tacked up to that straight section there. Now, of course, I do have a bit of a gapped bridge here, so I'm going to measure this out real quick. Looks like about 2.5 inches worth of straight tube that I need in order to complete this transition, and we'll get that tacked up as soon as I get it cut off. Now, unfortunately, I'm using a chop saw, so with the deflection and the quality of the cut versus my bandsaw, there's going to be a little bit of a gap, and I really don't want to have some crooked pipes coming together there. So we're going to take this piece of flat stock and tack it up so it's nice and straight, and I'll just use a little bit of filler here to bridge in that gap. Now later on when we weld it, it's not going to be that big of a deal to bridge in that gap. It looks pretty big on camera, but it's really no more than like a 1/16 of an inch. It's actually relatively small. It's manageable still. So as soon as I get that straight section done, we'll get this tacked on, kind of off, at an angle. I'm feeling just kind of, instead of going straight and like perfect with all of it, it's going to have a little bit of an angle, a little bit of a kick out to it. And then I'll worry about what's going to go on to the bottom end after I get this all tacked together and I check it out again. Now again, we're just kind of making this up as we go along. There's no real right or wrong to it. It's about how you feel and how you like it. So with the front cylinder already finished up, we're going to move on to the rear here. Now this is one section, I didn't get this on camera, but those are Stainless Bros tight radius pie cuts that I used for the exit on it. So we just kind of kicked it out there, and you'll see how I like it when I get the other one set up. So just the same as the front, we're going to go on the rear, get 90 degrees worth of pies here, and I really want to exaggerate that these are pie cuts. I really want it shown. So what I plan to do is take the rear cylinder and that tube, wrap it around the front cylinder, and then kind of stagger them side by side with their exit. Really extreme, but I want to see a lot of pies on this one. So as soon as I get those first 90 set up and I get the rear pipe cut down to the correct length where I need it, I'm going to get some pretty heavy tacks on there. I'm going to get a few of them on there just so that it doesn't move and there's no risk of breaking or anything like that, because this is going to be one seriously gnarly transition to get these things to wrap around correctly the way that I want to. So now it's just a matter of taking a few pieces of pie one by one and getting them kind of set up in the direction that I need to travel with it. And it's kind of difficult to really explain this, but you basically take a few of them, set the radius relatively loose, and what you can do that by clocking each individual one, say about 90 degrees or so off of the other one. So it will continue to make a transition, but very slowly make that transition. And you can kind of see it as we line it up here. There's a little bit of a curvature to it, but a little bit of a straight section to it. Now that's just by staggering them or clocking them roughly 90 degrees or so opposed to each other. So that does kind of straighten out while it does slowly transition at the same time. It's just a little bit of a trick. Now it's very hard to say exactly which way they go again, so you just got to kind of run with the feel of it and see where you like it. Now once we have it all set up, I'm going to take another 90 degrees worth of pies and kind of send it down so that way it wraps over and around. Now one of the beauties of pies, like I mentioned in many of the other pie cut videos, is you can change the direction. In this case, every 9 degrees, you can change the direction that it travels. So I'm pretty confident about where I have it lined up right now. It's only going to take a few more pieces of pie, so I'm just going to go crazy on making sure that these tacks are solid and the pieces don't move. So once I've got that set up, I'm going to add a couple more pieces of pie. I'm literally just eyeballing this as I go along here. And this straight section I'm using is just to kind of make sure that I have the stagger correct and I have the direction correct, because this is technically a double stagger that I have going on here. So it's just a matter of getting these clocked just right to make sure that the gap is the same on both sides and everything actually evens and transitions correctly. So again, this is all just by feel and eyesight, just kind of faking it, if you will. But once I have it set up there, I'm going to get the other set of tight radius pies set up, and I'm going to get those tacked to the bottom of it. I just want to make sure that everything is good to go and that it's set up correctly where it needs to be in order to make sure that this is right. Now it's going to take some time to make sure you have it in the right spot, but as soon as you do, get that tack on there, check it out, we got a bunch of pie cuts and one seriously epic looking exhaust. Preparation is key to ensuring that we have a good solid weld going on with our pies, and we have a let's try that again. Preparation is key to ensuring that we have a good solid weld as well as having really good tack welds, so make sure that you have enough of those on there. But in order to ensure a good solid weld, we're going to start with some acetone and a surface prep pad. Now this is going to get a good nice uniform finish to it, as well as clean off a lot of the oils and junk that we have on there. Then I'm going to chase it down with a clean rag with more acetone on it. Now from this point forward, my bare hands will not touch this tube. As is with all reactive metals such as stainless steel, we're going to make sure that we purge these. Now I'm going to set these plugs up and I'm going to pump this thing full of argon for probably about 5-10 minutes just to make sure there's enough, and then we're going to get welding on this one. Now I am going to utilize my pulser on this one, and I have it set relatively low. I believe I have it at 2 pulses per second with 20% on time, and I did jack up the amperage. Now the reason why is I want those pulses to literally fire that stainless straight through with a low enough profile, but I do want to have this bead kind of spread out at the same time. Now we'll kind of go over this and you'll see how it all stacks up and works throughout the course of this. And of course I have the maxed out post flow on this as well, and just to make sure I'm doing the double tap. Now typically we would end up with a little bit of distortion on this one, and we're going to have to focus on the actual procedure in welding these to combat distortion on this one, because normally what I would do is weld a section of them, let's say 5 pie cuts at a time, weld each section, and then just slowly work my way around the tubes or around each piece of pie. In this case, if we were to do that, it would pull the pies in one direction as opposed to the other. So since these have to be pretty much on point with their placement, I'm going to have to weld each one of these individually 360 degrees before I move on to the next piece of pie. Now, this is really important. We can't scratch this surface. So the idea is to kind of manipulate and move the tube in a direction or whichever way makes it easier for you to actually work on. So get kind of creative, but remember, be delicate, be easy with it. Make sure that you don't actually like slam it down or mess anything up as you go along. It's really important that you try to maintain that. Use whatever you have to prop it or do anything like that you have around to try and not scratch it, because we're going to leave a lot of color on these. And normally, I consider myself a golden child when it comes to stainless. I like that gold or that straw color in my beads, but the request was to utilize some of those properties of stainless and give it a lot of color. So how I'm doing that is by a process what we call sometimes over dabbing, which we pretty much keep on dabbing until you're outside of your coverage range, or if you are doing a short bead or something like that, you pull the torch away just a little bit sooner. Now when it comes down to these last few pieces of pie, since these are such a tight radius, I'm actually not going to use any filler. I'm going to run these completely autogenous and just let that pulser get in there and do its job. Now normally if you were doing this, if there was a structure to it, since this is the end of the tube or the end of the exhaust piece, we're not going to worry about it. But if you did have some sort of structure, it would be ideal to actually add filler while you're doing this. So pretty simple, just running all the way around the tube, one by one, all autogenous, keeping the pulser running, and just letting these things fill. Easy day. So that brings us to the build tally as we reassemble this piece nice and carefully, because we want to make sure that these two line up correctly, which they do. Distortion was a minimum thanks to our process. Now the build tally itself, we have a grand total of 70 stainless steel pie cuts from stainlessbros.com, which translates to 76 total welds, about 418 linear inches of weld to do, and roughly 180 cubic feet worth of argon is what it took to actually do that. Now, the grand total of labor, we had 8.5 hours to weld both of these pieces of exhaust together, and about 6 hours to fab, which is down from about 10. So thanks again to stainlessbros.com for making such a really awesome product, and you should definitely check that out and get some for yourself, because this translates to a lot of friggin' money, but technically a lot less, because the labor time to fabricate and mock everything up is significantly lower. So that brings us to the end of the episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Fabrication Series YouTube channel for more really awesome content. And I'll see you guys on the next episode.